I married a millionaire who bet $1 million that he could stay faithful to someone like me. Someone who didn't fit his world of models and socialites. What Thomas didn't know was that I had my own bet going. While he played his cruel game, I was playing mine. Because 5 years ago, this man destroyed my father's company and drove him to take his own life. My prize wasn't money. It was watching Thomas lose everything he thought made him untouchable. The champagne glass in my hand trembled slightly as I stood outside the restaurant, staring at my reflection in the tinted window. Behind that glass sat Thomas Whitmore, the man who killed my father without ever pulling a trigger. He didn't know who I was yet. To him, I was just Julia Bennett, a high school literature teacher chosen randomly for his sick game. But nothing about this was random. I'd spent 3 years planning this moment. 3 years of watching him from afar, learning his patterns, understanding his world. When his friend Marcus threw out that bet at their exclusive Miami Beach club, daring Thomas to marry someone beneath his standards, and remain faithful for 6 months, I made sure my name landed on that list. A few strategic connections, a carefully placed suggestion to Marcus's assistant, and here I was. The hostess opened the door, and suddenly I was walking toward him. Thomas sat in the corner booth, his tailored suit probably worth more than my monthly salary. He looked up from his phone with that practiced smile, the one that had charmed investors out of millions and probably broken countless hearts. "Julia." He stood, extending his hand. "Thomas Whitmore. I know who you are." I sat down without taking his hand, watching confusion flicker across his perfect features. "And I know about the bet." His smile faltered for just a second before snapping back into place. "I see Marcus has a big mouth." "I accept," I said flatly, meeting his blue eyes without blinking. 6 months. But after that, we walk away. Clean break. No strings. He laughed, actually laughed. Like I was a child pretending to understand adult games. "Just like that? You don't even want to know what you're getting into." I picked up the menu, hiding the rage burning in my chest. "I know exactly what I'm getting into, Thomas. The question is, do you?" The wedding happened on a Tuesday morning at the Miami-Dade County Courthouse. No flowers, no guests, no pretense of romance. Just 2 signatures on a legal document and a judge who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Thomas wore jeans, to his own wedding, as if to emphasize how little this meant to him. I wore a simple blue dress I'd owned for years. Neither of us smiled for the courthouse photo. "Well, Mrs. Whitmore," Thomas said as we walked out into the blinding Miami sun, "ready to see your new home?" Mrs. Whitmore. The name tasted like poison in my mouth. My mother had been Mrs. Bennett until the day she died of a broken heart 6 months after my father's suicide. She'd never recovered from watching everything they built crumble because Thomas needed another acquisition for his portfolio. His penthouse in downtown Miami was everything I expected. Cold, modern, and expensive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Biscayne Bay, the water glittering like scattered diamonds. It was beautiful in the way a museum is beautiful, something to admire but never touch, never truly live in. "Your room is down the hall," Thomas said, loosening his tie. "Unless you want to share mine?" The smirk on his face made my skin crawl. 6 months, Thomas. That's the deal. I'll play the dutiful wife in public, but behind these doors, we're strangers. Suit yourself. He poured himself a scotch, the ice clinking against crystal. "But I should warn you, everyone breaks eventually. The luxury, the lifestyle, the parties with people who actually matter. You'll want more. They always do." I walked to the window, staring at the city below. Somewhere out there was the empty lot where my father's company used to stand, torn down to make room for one of Thomas's developments. "You don't know anything about what I want," I whispered, pressing my palm against the cold glass. The first week in Thomas's penthouse felt like living in a glass cage. He'd leave early for his office downtown, returning late with the smell of expensive cologne and bourbon clinging to his clothes. I'd hear him on the phone, closing deals with the same cold precision he'd used to destroy my father. Every word felt like a knife twisting in an old wound. I kept to my routine deliberately. Each morning, I'd wake at 6, make coffee in his pristine kitchen that looked like it had never been used, and prepare for my teaching job. Thomas watched this ritual with growing irritation. "You know you don't have to work anymore," he said one morning, leaning against the doorframe in his silk robe. "I can give you an allowance. Buy you whatever you want." "I don't want your money, Thomas." "Everyone wants money, Julia. That's what makes the world turn." He moved closer, and I could smell his aftershave, something woody and obscenely expensive. "You're my wife now. People will expect you to look the part. I'm taking you to the Coral Gables charity gala next week. I didn't agree to be your trophy." His jaw tightened. "You agreed to 6 months. That includes playing the role in public. Or did you think you could just hide in here like some kind of hermit?" That night, he came home with shopping bags from boutiques I'd never even dreamed of entering. Dresses with designer labels, shoes that cost more than my car, jewelry that sparkled under the recessed lighting. He laid them out on my bed like offerings to a reluctant goddess. I stood in the doorway, staring at the display. My father used to bring my mother flowers from the grocery store every Friday. Simple daisies that cost $5. She'd put them in a mason jar and smile like she'd received diamonds. "Take them back," I said quietly. "Julia." I said, "Take them back. I'm not for sale, Thomas. Not anymore." The gala was everything I hated about Thomas's world. Crystal chandeliers, champagne that cost more per bottle than most people's rent, and conversations that never went deeper than stock portfolios and vacation homes. I wore a simple black dress I'd owned for years, deliberately ignoring Thomas's expensive gifts still sitting untouched in my closet. His hand rested on the small of my back as we moved through the crowd, a possessive gesture that made my skin crawl. But I smiled. I played the part. Because every person in this room was part of the world that had celebrated while my father's life fell apart. "Thomas. Wonderful to see you." A silver-haired man approached with a woman half his age on his arm. "And this must be the new Mrs. Whitmore?" "Julia," Thomas said tightly, clearly annoyed by my wardrobe choice. "This is Richard Morrison, CEO of Morrison Financial." I shook his hand, and then I saw it. The slight recognition in his eyes, the uncomfortable shift in his posture. He'd been at the meeting 5 years ago, when Thomas and his partners had systematically dismantled my father's company. Richard Morrison had been there, voting to approve the hostile takeover. "Have we met before?" he asked carefully. "I don't think so," I replied, my voice steady even as my heart hammered. "But Miami's a small world, isn't it?" As the evening wore on, I began to notice the patterns. The way Thomas commanded attention without trying, the way people leaned in when he spoke, eager to catch any hint of his next business move. He was charismatic, I had to admit. Magnetic. It was easy to see how people trusted him, right up until the moment he destroyed them. "You're quiet tonight," Thomas murmured as we danced, his hand firm against my waist. "Just observing," I said. "Learning how the game is played." "And what game is that?" I met his eyes. "Yours, Thomas. I'm learning to play your game." Thomas started watching me differently after that night. I'd catch him staring from across the penthouse, his expression unreadable. He stopped bringing home expensive gifts and started asking questions instead. Where did I grow up? What books did I love? Why did I become a teacher? Each question felt like a test, and I answered carefully, giving him pieces of truth wrapped in careful omissions. But then my carefully constructed walls began to crack. It started with small things. The way he'd make coffee for me in the morning without being asked, remembering that I took it black with 1 sugar. How he'd leave space heaters in the rooms where I worked because he'd noticed I was always cold. The night he came home early and found me crying over my father's old journal, he didn't ask questions, just sat beside me in silence until I could breathe again. "Who was he?" Thomas asked finally, his voice soft in the darkness. "My father." The words escaped before I could stop them. "He died 5 years ago." "I'm sorry." And the worst part was, he sounded like he meant it. That's when I knew I was in trouble. Because hating Thomas was easy when he was the arrogant millionaire who treated me like a possession. But this version, the one who remembered my coffee order and sat with me in my grief, was dangerous. This version made me forget why I was really here. One evening, I found him on the balcony, staring at the city lights with a whiskey in his hand. His usual confidence had cracked, revealing something raw underneath. "Do you ever think about the lives you've destroyed?" The question came out before I could stop it. He turned slowly, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "What do you mean?" "Your business deals. Your acquisitions. Do you ever think about the people behind the numbers?" The air between us turned electric with tension. Thomas set down his glass, his hands trembling slightly, the first time I'd seen him show any real vulnerability. "Your name," he said slowly, his voice hoarse. "Bennett. Julia Bennett." He ran his hand through his hair, his face draining of color. "Oh God. Richards Industries. Your father was David Bennett, wasn't he?" He used the Richards name, his wife's maiden name, for the company. I'd waited 3 years to see this moment. The recognition. The realization. But now that it was here, I felt nothing like I'd imagined. No triumph. No satisfaction. Just a hollow ache in my chest. "Yes," I whispered. "You destroyed his company. Took everything he'd built over 20 years and dismantled it in 6 months for parts. He lost his business, his savings, his dignity. And then he lost his will to live." Thomas stumbled backward like I'd physically struck him. "I didn't know, Julia. I swear I didn't know what happened to him. It was just business. Just numbers on a spreadsheet. Just numbers." My voice rose despite my attempt to stay calm. "My father was a person, Thomas. He had a family. A daughter who watched him write a suicide note because men like you treated his life's work like a game piece. Is that why you married me?" His voice cracked. "This whole thing, it was revenge?" "Yes." The word exploded from me, years of rage finally breaking free. "I wanted you to feel powerless for once. To know what it's like when someone treats you like you're nothing. Like you don't matter." He sank into a chair, his head in his hands. When he looked up, there were tears in his eyes, real tears that shattered something inside me. "You're right," he whispered. "I deserve this. I deserve all of it. What I did to your father, to so many others. God, Julia, what have I become?" The days that followed were silent torture. Thomas stopped going to work. He'd spend hours on the balcony, staring at nothing, or locked in his office making calls I couldn't hear. I wanted to feel victorious, but instead, I felt hollow. Then one morning, I found him in the kitchen, exhausted but with something different in his eyes. Purpose. "I've been making calls," he said quietly. "To every company I destroyed. Every person I ruined. I can't bring your father back, Julia. But I can try to make things right." "You think money fixes everything?" "No. But it's all I have." He pulled out a folder. "I'm reopening your father's company. The Bennett Richards Foundation. It'll fund small businesses, give them the protection and support they need against people like I was." My hands shook as I opened the folder. Legal documents. Financial projections. My father's old logo, carefully restored. "I don't want your guilt money, Thomas." "It's not guilt money. It's what should have been done 5 years ago." He moved closer. "I can't undo the past. But I can choose who I am from today forward. You showed me that. You showed me that behind every deal, every acquisition, there are real people with real lives." I looked at him, really looked, and saw a broken man trying to rebuild himself from ashes. "This doesn't erase what you did," I whispered. "I know. But maybe it's a start." 6 months became 8. Then 12. I never left. The Bennett Richards Foundation opened on what would have been my father's 60th birthday. Thomas and I stood together as they unveiled the sign, his hand tentatively finding mine. I let him hold it. Our marriage evolved into something neither of us expected. A partnership built not on a bet or revenge, but on the painful process of healing. Thomas continued his work, helping rebuild the lives his old self had destroyed. Some people forgave him. Many didn't. He accepted both with quiet grace. As for me, I learned that revenge tastes like ash in your mouth when you finally get it. What I wanted wasn't to destroy Thomas, it was to make him see. To make him human. Standing in our penthouse one evening, watching the Miami sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink, Thomas pulled me close. "Do you regret it?" he asked. "Marrying me for revenge?" I thought about my father. About forgiveness. About second chances neither of us deserved but both desperately needed. "No," I said finally. Because somewhere along the way, revenge turned into something else entirely. It turned into love. This is my story of triumph. Do you think I handled it correctly? If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Share your thoughts in the comments. I can't wait to hear your perspective. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to Memorable Stories and Overcoming, where we share inspiring stories of triumph and justice every single day.